The North Sea shimmered like dull silver under a cold April sky, the kind of sky that felt heavy with warning. A lone Bristol Beaufighter TF-Mk.X, call sign Raven 2, thundered low above the waves, its engines strained after a long, brutal strike deep along the Norwegian coast. Inside the aircraft, Flight Lieutenant Arthur Hawk Middleton wiped frost from the cockpit glass while fighting the stiff coastal winds. Behind him, cramped in the rear bay surrounded by ammo belts, metal frames, and frigid air, sat Flight Sergeant William Wills Keene, a young rear gunner with steady eyes and an unsettling calm that made others trust him without question. The two men had flown countless missions together, dodged death more times than they cared to remember, and knew that surviving today would demand more than routine skill. By 1943, German Bf 109 fighters dominated the skies over the North Sea. They were fast, ruthless, and usually emerged from the sun with the elegance of hawks and the lethality of blades. Allied strike aircraft, slower, heavier, hauling weapons and fuel, were little more than prey in open daylight. Everyone in Coastal Command understood that if German fighters intercepted you on the return leg, your odds of survival sank like iron in the ocean. Wills understood this better than most. He had lost his older brother Peter during the Battle of Britain, shot down by a squadron of Bf 109s that ambushed his formation on climb out. Since that day, Wills had sworn that no German fighter would ever take him or his pilot by surprise. He studied the enemy, memorized their dive angles, their firing habits, the rhythm of their approaches. While other gunners fired from panic or instinct, Wills fired like a surgeon, deliberate, calculated, almost cold. Raven 2 had just completed a successful attack on a German convoy near Stavanger. Because the strike was so effective, a large portion of JG-11 had scrambled in response. Hawk and Wills knew that somewhere behind them, German fighters were already hunting. Fuel was low, ammunition lighter than they wished, and radio interference from an incoming storm made communications patchy at best. When Hawk asked, "You all right back there?" Wills responded with dry humor about sitting in a tin coffin, but both men felt the tension rising in the icy air. It started with a flicker on the horizon, sunlight glinting off metal. Wills saw it first. 12 dots in tight formation, diving swiftly. "Hawk," he said, voice steady. "Fighters. Bearing 520. Looks like 109s. Hawk's jaw locked. 12? Wills nodded, already rotating his turret and feeling the cold vibration in the grips. Maybe more. Hawk pushed the throttle, but they both knew the truth. They couldn't outrun them. They had to survive them. The first two Bf 109s dove like falling spears, cannons flashing. Hawk rolled the Beaufighter into a corkscrew dive, the airframe groaning under the pressure. Wills didn't fire, yet. He tracked the fighters, studying their angle, speed, and the slight correction they made before opening fire. His breath steadied. His mind sharpened. He waited until the lead fighter was so close he could see the pilot's goggles catch the light. Then he fired only 3 rounds. Not at the plane, at the point the fighter would enter. The Bf 109 flew straight into the burst and disintegrated. Its wingman panicked, overshooting, and Wills snapped another short burst into its belly. The second fighter spiraled into the sea. 2 kills in seconds. But 10 remained. More fighters lined up, rounds ripping through Raven 2's fuselage. A cannon shell tore a hole through the tail. Hawk shouted that they couldn't take another hit like that. Wills answered calmly, "We won't. But I need you to hold this bird level." Hawk stared at the horizon in disbelief. "Level? They'll shred us." Will's voice remained steady. "Not if you trust me." A moment of silence passed between them, a moment built on dozens of missions, shared fear, and shared survival. Hawk leveled the plane. Wills prepared himself for the tactic he had practiced secretly, never fully used in combat, and never once mentioned to his instructors. Some gunners called it suicidal. Others said it was madness. It relied on baiting the enemy, letting them come dangerously, impossibly close. Then manipulating the turret beyond its normal limitations to create an angle number 109 pilot could predict. Wills unlocked the safety latch that mechanics insisted should never be touched mid-flight. It freed the turret's movement. It also exposed his upper body outside the turret ring, leaving him vulnerable to cannon fire. But it gave him full visibility, a godlike view of the battlefield. 6 Bf-109s formed a tight formation and dove together, a strategy meant to overwhelm the rear gunner. Wills watched them approach with terrifying discipline. "Not yet," he whispered as the planes closed. Hawk shouted warnings. Wills ignored them. At 200 meters, he still didn't fire. At 100, he still waited. At 50 meters, with the Germans opening fire, Wills slammed the turret straight upward, an angle no gunner was ever meant to use. He unleashed a wall of lead, a rising cone of fire that intersected the dive path perfectly. The first German fighter hit the burst and exploded instantly. The second collided with the wreckage of the first. The third tried to pull out of the dive but flew straight into Wills' sweeping fire. The fourth took a burst to the radiator and went into a violent spin. One more attempted to break free, but Wills caught it in the fuel line. Flames roared across the sky. The impossible had happened. In less than 10 seconds, 6 German fighters had been destroyed by a single gunner who was now partially exposed to the open sky, his turret smoking, his face lit by tracers and fire. The remaining German fighters circled back in confusion. To Oberleutnant Erich Schreiber, the Luftwaffe commander leading the mission, the situation was unthinkable. He ordered his pilots to attack from blind spots, below and from the forward quarter, angles no normal turret could cover. But Wills was anything but normal. When Hawk warned of approaching fighters from below and ahead, Wills instructed him to pitch the plane up by a single degree. Hawk didn't understand the purpose, but he obeyed instantly. That minor adjustment exposed the attackers below, and gave Wills just enough angle to line them up. 2 more fighters burst into flame. Another lost its wing. Now only 3 remained, Schreiber's own section. They attacked head-on, a deadly gamble at high closing speed. Wills matched their angle and did something no training manual allowed. He waited until the very instant the enemy fired, then shot directly into their path. The first fighter exploded. The second collided with debris. The last tried to climb away, but Wills caught its tail and sent it spinning into the sea. Silence fell. The sky was suddenly empty. Hawk and Wills were alone again, battered, riddled with holes, but alive. In 4 minutes, Wills had destroyed 12 Bf-109s in what should have been a one-sided slaughter. The Beaufighter limped toward friendly waters, but one engine began smoking heavily. Hawk nursed the crippled aircraft as far as he could before ditching near an Allied trawler. Both men survived the freezing crash, hauled aboard by shocked sailors who couldn't believe what the 2 airmen claimed had happened. When RAF intelligence reviewed the gun camera footage, they were stunned. Not just at the incredible kill count, but at the technique Wills invented, a combination of predictive firing, illegal turret unlocking, and calculated baiting. Some called it madness. Others called it genius. It was eventually studied, analyzed, and quietly incorporated into revised defensive training procedures. Though heavily modified for safety, the core principle, the upward arc of fire, became known informally as the Keene cone. Wills himself never boasted about that day. After the war, he became a mathematics teacher in Kent, living quietly and privately. His students never suspected their gentle instructor once rewrote the laws of air combat in 4 minutes. When he died in 1987, Hawk, his old pilot, stood at his grave and whispered that he hadn't survived because of luck but because he understood the sky better than the men hunting him. The sea forgot the wrecks. The wind scattered the memories. But the story lived on, carried in whispers among airmen, analysts, and historians, how one gunner with a suicidal tactic destroyed 12 Bf-109s in 4 minutes and changed air combat.